Okay. Kwesi, I can hear you talking about February. What's happening in February?
Well, in February, we'll have the fourth round of negotiations. And so in December, on December 5th, countries and all stakeholders are expected to submit their thoughts, their positions on the convention as well as workstream 3. And then we would have to revisit a full session of the negotiations in February, basically a continuation of where we've left off in Nairobi. So yeah, and remember the deadline is for us to come up with a convention is 2027. So we don't have a lot of time left. So that's why so that's essentially what's going to happen in February. It's not going to happen in Nairobi. It's going to happen in New York, the most expensive city. But yeah.
Okay. And River, we're heading into that new phase of negotiations coming up next year. How do you think we should prepare for it?
I mean, I think there's so many ways. I know some of us are deliberately, directly speaking to our representatives, making submissions or asking them to make submissions around the convention, but then even as civil society coming up with our own, we did make one, but there's still room to elaborate on it and make it more robust. There's also just kind of popularizing and simplifying the message so people understand, like, Alan has been doing what tax means. I think it's become, I think budget issues and finance have become a lot more popular in public spaces. And so it's just, getting more people interested, invested. And it's that kind of interest that brings negotiations to Africa. It's that kind of interest that allows civil society to be in the room, that allows greater participation, greater transparency, and also just dovetailing and interacting with the different processes. We brought these issues up at the 4th Financing for Development Forum in Sevilla this year. There were interrelated, conversations between the tax negotiations and COP. These are all intersecting, interrelated causes. Taxes finance everything, including, climate finance. So we need to all be united. So I think there's, a broad array of ways that we can continue to invest in our collective future.
Yeah. So Alan, I'm now moving on to you. And as we head into 2026 for really the next phase of negotiations, what do you want to see out of that process?
Well, I think, of course, is to maintain the momentum. I think, like Kwesi and River have said, we now just need to keep the foot on the gas. I think that's what I can say. And to do this, we'll have to keep this conversation in all spheres of public life. Let me put it that way, because it's one thing to, for example, to go for an AU meeting on peace and we say monies that would have been put to invest in technology, for example, in our economies, to invest in education and all that. We are using it, for example, to buy arms. But who are we protecting ourselves from? Who are we? So it's taking away. So I believe we can have or connect the nexuses and the linkages to almost every sphere of life, so that our negotiators, our governments, our politicians, wherever they are, they see and hear the same message. And I think that's what got us to where we are right now. 5 years ago, issues of illicit financial flows, issues of, aggressive tax avoidance and all those things, they were considered technical. But these days, even when you're discussing reforming multilateralism, one of the antidotes, I'm talking, for example, the G20, when we're talking about, now these are conversations that now are coming up everywhere. You have to talk about the global financial architecture. You have to talk about how do we change, for example, the global debt architecture and all that. So the idea, I think, for me is to keep the momentum. And how we do that is that we have this conversation in every space that we are in. whether it's music, whether it's medicine, whether it's with peace and security. And for the simple reason, because if we fail on this side, none of those is going to really be able to amount to what we want it to be. You could look at the Millennium Development Goals. We had those goals, they came, they went away. Why? Resources. In 15 years, we told ourselves we would have, and even have an entire SDG 17 towards, partnerships for development and all that. So as we're talking about everything else development, I think we should be able, or we should be talking about why we need to have fair allocation of taxing rights, to have that sort of revenue so that governments don't cut funding where they need to put it, so that governments have the resources they need. And especially in this era that we're in, to invest in sectors that are critical to human development. And you can imagine where, for example, we've been having a bad situation with unemployment, and then you have AI that is making it worse. So, but you're not investing in alternatives. You're not, where countries are talking about basic personal income, or credit and all that. You can't do that because you don't have the resources to do that. So me, I think what I would want to see is that we maintain the momentum. I would also want to see more constituencies, more movements joining in. I'll give an example. When we were in the negotiation room, we realized, at least from the youth perspective, we didn't have youth from Latin America, we didn't have youth from Northern America, we didn't have youth from Asia. But are you saying that they are not facing the same challenges, the same problems that people in Europe and people in Africa are facing? So I think for me, that's the other thing I want to say. I want to see more people. We have to take back our power. I remember during when Kenyan youth were taking back their power, someone said something that was interesting. She said they had delegated their power for MPs to work for them. Since they didn't, they were going to come and do group work. And it reminded me when we were doing group work, and you contribute what you think should be the solution to the challenge that you've been given. I think I would like to see more young people, more movements, more trade unions, more everyone coming to do group work with our negotiators, so that we have a framework convention that works for all of us. Yeah.
Okay.